Greetings, family out there. Today's lecture, we're focusing on the reality that black people who live here in America are not citizens. I think this is an extremely important topic due to the reality that black people are taught and have been taught since 1865 that they're citizens of the United States. And that's the farthest from the truth. That's the furthest from the truth. What is the status of black people in the United States? And one of the things we want to bring people's attention to is the reality that our status is what we call resident alien. We're residents here in the United States. This is an actual fact. But we're alien insofar to the United States laws.
When you say alien, you mean like Mexicans, like how they would
anyone who comes over the border, basically, and they're not a part of the United States political, legal arena. So, where the laws are designed for the benefit of that individual.
I know most people probably have an immediate challenge with that kind of concept because as opposed to people who would be considered aliens here, you know, we got driver's license, we got birth certificates, we engage with everything. Most of us, we're not in fear of being like deported and stuff.
That's an illusion. We're going to deport black people because black people were kidnapped. Mm-hmm. We were brought here, as opposed to Mexicans. They choose to come here. Black people are the only people on the territory here that were kidnapped and brought here, or if you talk to a Moor and say, well, we was already here before Columbus, right? So either way, it doesn't really matter. Either we were kidnapped and brought here from the continent of Africa, or we were indigenous and got conquered.
And we're native. This is our native land.
Right. So either we were indigenous to the land, or we were kidnapped. It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that black people are not citizens of the United States. And so the question comes, what is a citizen? That's what the problem is. Our people don't really understand or comprehend what a citizen is. We've touched on this in other lectures that we've done, but I think it's important that we dedicate this particular subject matter because it's so vital and our lives are so influenced by thinking that we're citizens. But we get no benefit, we get no rights. We don't have rights of a citizen. We have, as resident alien, we put here, we have benefits for being in the United States. We have privileges from being in the United States. We have immunities from being in the United States as residents, but we don't have rights. And there's a big difference.
We're going to need to explain that because, as far as people living here on a day-to-day basis, I'm sure they would take the benefits. Well, we do. We take the benefits, privileges, and immunities. We just accept that's life. That's what it's going to be.
We subconsciously, we all know we don't have no rights. You know that every time a black person gets shot by the cops and nothing happens.
Yeah. But they say specifically, that ain't right. We get treated wrong.
I mean, it's just a reality. And it should also tell us we're not citizens because they claim we became citizens in 1865. But 100 years into the future, 1965, we had the civil rights movement. We had to fight for citizen rights with the whole Martin Luther King thing.
That's right.
So we have a nice big picture of Martin Luther King right here. And this brother, they killed him for trying to get rights for us as a people. So that should tell you if Martin Luther King was fighting for citizen rights, right? What they call the civil rights movement. And the end result is they killed the brother. What was that, 1968?
68.
That they assassinated him. So what does that say? They killed the leader of the citizen rights movement for black people. You never got it. You never got it.
What do you say to, I was going to say before you move on with that, what do you say to people who say we did get it insofar as things like, what's it called? Affirmative action. People got jobs.
Again, they're confusing benefits, privileges, and immunities with rights. That's where the problem is.
So those jobs and stuff like that will fall up under privileges and immunities.
Yeah, those are benefits and privileges. That's The only difference. That's all it means. But it's not rights. Rights, see, this is what's dangerous with being with European people, Caucasian people, because they don't explain these things to us. They make us think we're citizens, but they know good and well we're not citizens.
And they certainly are not teaching civics.
I've
heard now
no,
when students only get 3 or 4 months maybe of civics government class, and I'm sure they do a poor job at teaching that.
It's a nasty deception. It's no different than the deception. We did the video that the 3 great lies.
Yes.
That the slave master taught us, right? The first lie that the white man's God. The second lie was that black people had no culture, and the white man had to come and civilize us,
yes.
right? And then the third lie was that they're the father of everything. They created everything. And so this is another one of those lies, that black people are citizens, that you earned your citizenship status in 1865 with the passing of the 13th and 14th Amendment. Now you go watch, anybody listen, go watch the video 13th.
That's right, the Netflix documentary.
It was on Netflix, documentary. Addressing the reality that black people are not citizens. And that's a current documentary. When that came out? Last year, 2016 or something?
Yeah.
Because we're in 2018, so a couple years ago?
Yeah,
that came
out. Very recent.
Yeah, it's a current document explaining how we're really not citizens. So we have to wake up, because we really do not comprehend what are rights versus what are the privileges, benefits, and the immunities that we get. So the key to comprehending rights is the ability to be able to create your government, alter your government, and create conditions that benefit you as a people. Now, black people have been under the rulership of the Caucasian now since they came here 400 years ago. And the United States was created, they say, in 1776, right?
Yeah.
This is what they teach us. From the inception, the creation of the United States government till today, which we're at 2018, there's not one law from the United States Constitution till today, with all those statutes and laws that they passed on the federal or state level, that has ever been passed for the development and benefit of black people as a body of people, so that we can have equal status to control land, property, goods and services for the benefit and well-being of black people. Not one law was designed for that. And that's the whole purpose of having government. The whole purpose of having government is to create laws for the benefit of the citizens, where they can prosper in property rights, they can prosper in developing their will and ability to do what they choose to do for the benefit of themselves and the greater whole of their people.
I would wonder, well, I've heard a lot of people discuss this, especially after Barack got elected. Think that seems to be the push why so many black people are comfortable or striving for pushing for black people in government to be politicians, whether it's on a mayor level, senator, governor, all the way up to the president, because we think that's the way to change things.
Yeah, but the first step is the benefit of creating a government is to protect your culture, your cultural ideals, and your way of life. The question is, what are the cultural ideals and the way of life for black people? It's been stripped of us. Today, we as black people live under the cultural ideals of Europeans. Literally, we've been stripped of our language, we've been stripped of our property, we've been stripped of our identity, we've been stripped of our possessions, so we have no control over any of those things. So what we're talking about, our lecture, what we're focusing on is, because you guys just come in, we're focusing on that black people are not citizens here in the United States. So, and we're explaining that black people's status in the United States is what we call resident alien, in the sense that we're residents, we live here, right? but we're alien to having rights in the United States. What we do have is we have benefits, we have privileges, and we have immunities, but we have no rights. But go ahead.
So you already broke down what a democracy is and what a citizen is?
No, we didn't get into that. We're addressing a citizen, but we didn't get into what a democracy is. We didn't address that yet. Unless you have a question on that?
No,
Okay.
I just didn't know if we missed that part. Yeah.
Okay, no. What we're trying to make clear is what is a citizen? Exactly what is a citizen? See, they purposely, and what we covered earlier is what we were saying is this. Think about this. Do anyone knows when black people, first of all, what was the status of black people from when they created the United States government? What was our condition here in the United States?
Slaves.
We were slaves, right? Everyone knows that. Black people were slaves. When did black people get their freedom, they say? Do you know? Anyone?
No, they said we were...
It was 68, 69.
You're close. 1865. 1865 is when they so-called abolished slavery with the passing of the 13th and the 14th Amendment. Okay? And with the 14th Amendment, that's where they claimed that black people were citizens. Right? But now, if we go from 1865, you jump 100 years into the future, and you're now at 1965. Guess what's going on in 1965? See that image, that picture right there?
The
Civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement. What was that all about?
Giving black people civil rights.
So now, 100 years later,
But still,
black people are fighting for citizenship rights. I thought we got that in 1865. Obviously, you didn't get it. And then what was the end result with him?
got shot in the
They
head.
killed him. So, so you fought for something you really didn't get. You never got the rights of a citizen. And the question then comes, well, what is the rights of the citizen? They don't teach that. Which is why when you look at the school system, really they don't teach civics. They don't really educate people about civics, especially black people, which is why we really don't understand the difference between having rights and having what we do have, which is benefits, privileges, and immunities. It's like at your job. When you work at your job, you don't have rights at your job. Okay? You have benefits, you have privileges and immunities. You work there, right? And the benefit of working there is you get a paycheck, right? Now you get certain privileges. Some people can work less hours and make more money. Others have to work more money. It depends. That deals with immunities as well. But you don't really have rights because you can't tell the job, this is how I want things to be done. Right? You can't tell them when your schedule is, how you want your schedule is, and you can't tell them how much you want them to pay you. You don't have no rights to do that. Only the owners can do that. They have rights. But you as an employee don't have any rights to do that. You only have to take the benefits, privileges, and immunities that they give you. And that's the difference between having rights and just having all the other stuff. Rights means control. Means you can change the way things are operated. You follow? You can make rules and regulations for your benefit. That's what rights are. Now I ask you, since the United States was created in 1776, Independence Day, George Washington, all those guys. And where we at? Today is 2018. What started this country was the Constitution, right? The first law, the law of the land. And then they wrote all these other laws. What law has ever been written by black people on a federal level or on a state level where black people created laws for their benefits to create conditions for their ability to shape their lifestyle here in the United States? No one will ever be able to tell you because it never happened. And you know why it's never happened? Why we've never been able to write any laws that benefit us as a group?
Because we're not citizens.
Yeah, you don't have no rights to do that. You have no control. Only those who have control can do something like that. You literally have to have control to do that. White people do it every day of the week. They write laws for their benefit. And we get the crumbs of that basically, by being resident alien. And we talked about, they just put out a documentary. It's on Netflix. Definitely go see it. It's called 13th.
It's Ava DuVernay.
That's the name of the
That's the
individual.
director, yeah, the lady.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's called 13th. Definitely go watch that because it's a modern day version of trying to explain what I'm talking about now. That black people live here but really don't have any rights. And when they wrote the 13th Amendment, the 13th Amendment was supposedly what abolished slavery, but it never really abolished slavery. And most people never read the 13th Amendment. You know what it says in the 13th Amendment? And we'll pull it up on the video for our people, but
We changed it.
all they said was this, that, and I'll paraphrase it. It says that slavery should not exist in the United States except, and put an exception there, except for those who violate the law. So if you live in the United States and you violate the law, you're subject to slavery again, i.e. the prison system. So all it was designed, that's all they did was they reword the language. They reword the language, basically. And so they created the prison system, which is why so many black people are ushered into the prison system, because we're violating the laws of the United States. So they reinstitute slavery. But now here's the question. What are 95% of the crimes that people in prison, what do you think majority of those crimes are in reference to? Money. Now, when you make somebody a slave, right? The whole point of making someone a slave, the first thing they take from you is your possessions, your property. The whole point of slavery is, why somebody want to enslave you, is they want to use your labor and make money off of it. So they take all your possessions and now you work for them, right? Continuously. So it's designed to make you poor and make them rich. That's the whole point of slavery. To make you poor, make them rich, right? But now, when slavery creates forced poverty. So when you have a body of people who are in poverty, and what's the necessity of every human being must have to live?
Money. Oh, necessity.
Necessity. Food.
Water.
What else?
Water, shelter,
Food,
education.
shelter,
Clothing.
and clothing. Food, clothing, shelter. Those are necessities. Everyone must have it, right? But if I create a society where I make you impoverished, right? And then you knowing that you need food, clothing, shelter, and then I tell you, well, in order to get food, clothing, shelter, you need money to do it. In order to get money, you have to work for me, right? In order to work for me, you have to meet these conditions. And if you don't meet these conditions, you can't get a job. So what does that leave the individual in poverty to do?
Work and slave.
If he
Go
can't get a
steal,
job,
go get it.
if he can't get a job,
Go
what do you
get
think he's gonna do?
Steal, whatever.
Exactly. I'm like,
Around.
you put anybody in poverty, they're gonna commit crimes.
Survival is number one.
That's just inevitable. This is why the black population has a high prison rate. It's by design, literally, because what slavery was designed to do was create a permanent underclass for black people, a poverty-stricken group of people, literally. Because it's designed to make you poor by taking all your possessions and making someone else rich. And that's exactly what it's designed to do. And after slavery, did white people compensate black people? No. So they never gave you anything. So you stayed poor. And then they told you, well, you got to work for a living. And then they said, in order to work, you have to meet these conditions. You got to obey these particular laws. And this is why black people to this very day have a very difficult time surviving and existing in this society, because they're set up all these rules and regulations of how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. And they know a large majority of us are not going to want to follow those rules. And so they say, well, you're breaking the law. And that's their excuse to put you back in slavery. which is called the prison system. It's an advanced, very sophisticated trap that they got us all locked in. It's very advanced, very sophisticated, because we haven't been able to figure out how to fix this problem that we're under, literally. And so, if you had rights, right, as you as a body of people, as black people, if we had rights, would we create a system that does that to us? No one would do that. No one would create a system that keeps them in poverty, keeps them begging, keeps them searching for jobs, keeps them constantly trying to compete, basically, against another group of people that they can't compete against, Europeans. Which is why, when you check the income ratio versus black versus white, I think they said white people make 3,500 times more money than we do. I'll do that again. They said, this is according to Claude Anderson, they said they make 3,500 times more money than we do. What that means is for every $1 that a black woman has, a white woman has $3,500.
You couldn't possibly compete like that.
Yeah, who can compete against that? For every $1 a black woman has, a white woman has $3,500. That's insane. Now, if that's exaggerated, even if she had $100, let's say the white woman has $100, black woman has $1, how could she ever compete?
Having 100 times more resources.
You just get you can't compete. You can't compete, literally. And here's the other thing. In order for black people to make money in the United States, you have to talk like a Caucasian. You have to dress like a Caucasian. You have to totally surrender anything that's indigenous or African about you in order to live in their society. Because you can't, they call you African American, but they won't allow nothing African of you in their corporation. You have to completely identify with the European status quo in their culture. So, that's the proof to you, you're not a citizen. You don't have rights. You're a resident, you live here, but you're alien to all of the rights. No different than a Mexican. The only reason why they ain't trying to build a wall and kick us out, because they got nowhere to put us. They literally had nowhere to, to export us to.
You said something earlier though was interesting about it. With the fact that citizenship with rights, the point of creating a government is to protect your culture.
Yeah.
Not just, your property, but your actual culture. It's amazing how nowadays when you just like survey most of our people, we don't actually identify with anything outside of Western culture.
Well, because they never really taught us what culture really means and the significance of it. So, for instance, if you guys go back, 7 generations removed, you go back to your father, then his father, your grandfather, to your great-grandfather, to your great-great-grandfather, go back to like 6 of them, your great-great-great-grandfather. His culture, one, he didn't speak English, so that's one, you know that, because he wasn't European. He wasn't dressing like an Englishman, right? He had nothing to identify him with being English. Your great-great-grandfather and grandmother, they had an indigenous culture that worked for them as a people, right? But now, us, we're the children. We speak like English people. We dress like them. All of our mannerisms and our likes and dislikes. We eat like the European. Everything we do is contrary to our indigenous culture, literally. And then we wonder why we're suffering. You can't come into someone else's house, do everything that individual does because they taught you, and think you're going to be on the same level as them. You can never be. No matter how good LeBron James is, how much money he makes, there's always someone writing him a check. So Oprah Winfrey has $2 billion. She only has $2 billion because the individual who controls the bank wrote the check. So she's always will be in a subservient position. The individual who's not in a subservient position is the one who's creating the money. That's the difference. And that tells you your status. So Oprah, like everyone else, she gets benefits. She gets a lot more benefits than the average individual. Why? Because of the simple fact that she produces more. You get rewarded based on your production. So if you work for let's say the sanitation department, and you're making $40,000 a year versus LeBron James, who's making $40 million a year. It's his productivity. The difference in the productivity will determine the benefits you get, the privileges. Imagine the privileges LeBron James gets in Cleveland. You know what I'm saying?
Anywhere.
Yeah,
You probably don't have to
Yeah,
pay
you
for
probably-
anything.
Yeah, we
Exactly.
talked about it. No
There's
tickets, no that,
immunities he
right?
gets. Exactly. The immunities he gets, like cop stops us. LeBron James, go ahead.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They stop you and me.
I gotta watch you play.
They put us under the jail. So that's the difference. That he doesn't have any rights. He can't control and create laws and change and dictate policy in the states or anything like that. He has to still follow those laws. But the people who create those laws, they decide who gets immunities, who gets privileges, and who gets benefits. And that's the difference between being alien to a society and being a citizen. That's the big difference. That's literally what it means. And of course, they don't teach that. They don't teach that in their system, but that's the harsh reality. That's the harsh reality. We're trying to get that message out to our people to get to the reality of what our status is, because you can't change something you don't comprehend. You can't change something you don't even know exists. So that's extremely important. To really know the difference between being resident alien and being a citizen of a particular nation or society. And so, I mean, this is our struggle. You know, this is our struggle as Nuwaupu's. But any questions on this subject matter? Any questions and concerns in reference to what we're talking about? And go ahead.
So, given the time frame that we've had to make the changes and no changes have been made, what should be the process now as far as obtaining rights? Should we try to still obtain rights here?
Okay. Well, see, that's what the problem is.
How can you have a nation within a nation?
Okay. The problem is, when you look at Martin Luther King, and he's a prime example, and you even look at someone like Malcolm X, right? I have this picture up here. Boom. I'm right here. Malcolm X. He's another prime example. Both of them got killed. Right? Both of them got killed. When you have rights, that means you have control. Because you can, like the owner of a corporation, you can change policy, laws, rules, and regulations in the corporation. An employee in a corporation can never do that. Even if you become a CEO of the corporation, right? Like Barack Obama. You can never change. He can't change the Constitution. He has no authority to do that. He has to follow the rules, laws, regulations of the corporation. Period. So, in order to make change, there's a saying growing up, like in black families, I'm sure it's everywhere. Even fathers, a lot of fathers tell their sons, when you grow up, when it's your house, you make the rules.
Mm-hmm.
You heard that?
Yeah.
When it's your house, you make the rules.
But you can't have a house here.
Okay, so now apply that scenario. In order for black people to have rights, you have to have first
Land.
your own nation. Nation first. And I'll explain that. Maybe we'll
do another video on that.
yeah, we'll segment out of the citizen. We're done with that. Now we're going to get into another subject. And this subject is dealing with what is a nation, what is a government, and what is a state? What is a nation? What is a government? And what is a state? Okay? This is all kind of dealing with the same subject matter, which is civics. But they don't teach this to our people, so we don't know, right? Okay, let's first decide or explain what is a nation. Real simple, real simple. All a nation is this. It's two or more people who share the same culture. What does that mean? Two or more people who do the same thing. They have the same rituals. They dress the same, talk the same. They have the same objectives. They have the same goals. That's called a body, a nation of people, a group of people that share the same cultural ideals, the same cultural rituals. So if you go to, let's say you go to India, they have a language, they have a dress code, they have a food, and they have traditions that they all follow. That means that's a nation of people, right? If you go to Israel, they have a language, they have a tradition, they have a food, they have a clothes, the way they do things, how they interact with each other. That's called their culture, okay? If you go to Japan, same thing in Japan. No different is when you go to France. They have a language, they have a dress code, they have a code, they have a way, the way they do things, and that's called the culture. And when you have a group of people who do things exactly the same, that's called a nation, okay? That's called a nation of people. Now, what is a government? A government is when those same group of people who share the same cultural ideals, they get together and say, hey, listen, this is how we live, right? Let's work together to protect one another and how we live. So that means if somebody from the outside wants to mess with you and try to stop you from how you want to live, I got your back. And vice versa, you got my back. And now, that's the beginnings of a government where we're going to create rules, laws, rules, and regulations of how we're going to live. Okay, so now you have the nation of people first who agree this is how we're going to live, right? Then those nation of people say, you know what, we're going to create a government and we're going to write down this is how we do things. And we're going to agree to protect each other. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to create our own little army. So when we have children, we're going to start recruiting our little ones to come be in this army. And then as we make money, we're going to start giving a piece of our money, and we're going to pool it together, right, called taxes. And that money is how we're going to pay for our army, how we're going to pay for our weapons, how we're going to pay for. So this is the beginning of a government. But a government starts with a nation. Now, the nation, those individuals in the nation are the citizens, because they're the ones creating this setup. They can change it. They can restructure it however they see fit because they created it. You with me on that? Okay. So now they create the government. Okay. So now you have the nation first, government second. What's third? Third is called your state. Now we need territory. We need territory. Territory. So they carve out a piece of territory, wherever that is, right? And they say, in this territory, in these borders, this is how we live is how we do it in these particular borders. Okay? So that means if you're a foreigner, you're from outside, right? And you come in to our borders, you're going to have to follow our rules. The way we do it, how we do it, when we do it, and why we do it. You're going to have to follow those rules, okay, when you're in our borders. That's called a state. So, you have many bodies of people who are nations, right, that have a government, but they have no state. They have no state. They have no what they call sovereign territory where they can control how everything goes on in that land. They have no state. Okay? Some examples of that. Well, historically, you had the Jews that live in Israel today. They were a nation of people without a state until 1945, when they was given a state. They was given a body of land, basically, where they was able to create and set up their government under that territory. Anybody can create a nation. You have many nations that exist within other nations. Another example of that would be the Vatican, where the Pope lives. The Vatican is 1 square mile inside the nation of Italy. They're 1 square mile inside the nation of Italy. The Vatican is its own separate nation.
Got their own laws,
Yeah.
government, police, everything.
Exactly. They're their own separate nation within a nation. Okay? Another example of a nation within a nation. All these Native Americans that have reservations. Right here in the United States. all the reservations, those are sovereign territories. Those are nations within a nation. Literally. Nations within a nation, but they don't have a state.
Okay.
They don't have a state. You with me?
Yeah. Okay.
Because their land is not totally sovereign.
Yeah.
That's why the United States government can infringe on their land anytime they want.
Standing rock.
Exactly. Because they don't have a state. And they don't have a standing army to fight off anyone infringing on their territory. So you can have a nation with no state. You can have a nation/government with no state. You with me on that? That's the difference. Again, because they don't teach this in civics, a lot of people don't know the difference, and so they thinking nation and state are one and the same, and they're not.
So what's a district?
All that is are territories within a state. So, for instance, you have what they call the District of Columbia, right? Now, that wasn't set up as a state, and that gets a little bit more complex, because the United States is something different. First of all, the United States is what they call a federation. It's a federation. What is that? A federation is multiple nations, sovereign nations, that come together under one umbrella. Okay? Multiple nations, sovereign nations that come together under one umbrella. Okay? And that's called the federation. And that's where you get the word federal government from. Because you have 50 states, like Georgia. Georgia is an independent state. It's a sovereign state, but it's under the jurisdiction of the federation. What does that mean? That's why if you go in Georgia, right, you have to pay state income tax when you work in Georgia, okay? But if you move to Florida, you don't have to pay no state income tax. No. All right? You have to pay state income tax. Well, what's the difference? Because if the people who live in Florida, they have their own jurisdiction, their own sovereignty of how they create laws, rules, and regulations of how they operate their state. As opposed to when you go to Georgia. Georgia has a constitution. You go to Tennessee. Tennessee has its own constitution. If you go to North Carolina, they have their own constitution. They have their own rules, their own regulations. That's why some states you go to and you have to pay property tax, right? Like Georgia. Other states you go to, you don't have to pay any property tax, like Delaware. Okay? And so that's up to the people, the citizens that live in that state. They control the laws, rules, and regulations. That's why I said black people never been able to do any of this since we've been here. We've never been able to shape the bodies of laws for the benefit of black people, because that's the whole point of government. Let me explain that real quick. We live in DeKalb County. Okay? Live in DeKalb County. Are you guys familiar with who your representative of? Who your representative is in DeKalb County for the federal government?
No.
Y'all know? You know why y'all know?
Because they ain't from Georgia.
No, well, that's one reason.
So this game out there.
Because it don't benefit us the way it would benefit other people.
Okay, right. He's called a representative. The representative for this district, his name is Hank Johnson.
He doesn't represent me.
Exactly. And you know why he doesn't represent you?
Because we black people.
Well, you have no power.
We didn't give him any money. We didn't put him in office.
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
So, okay, they get on you. They tell black people you need to go vote. Because if you don't vote, they say you don't complain
If you don't vote.
when somebody gets in office and it does something and you didn't vote, right? Listen to God, don't listen to.
Yeah, 'cause
That's the
it's
most
not fair to
ridiculous.
black kids either.
Let me explain what that means. There's a comedian, George Carlin.
Yeah.
He does. He said, no, I don't vote. He said, I don't vote. And when that guy messes up, you don't have to blame me because I was the one who voted for him. Blame all the people that voted for him. They're the reason why he's in there messing up. But anyway, no. Your representative is called a representative. You vote for your representative because his job is when he gets to Congress, he's there to represent your interests. He's there to focus on passing laws that's in your best interest. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the job of a representative. So, would you vote for somebody who's not going to represent you?
No.
This is why black people don't care about government. Because you already know that there's no one there to represent you. Literally. There's no one there that's there to represent. Meaning, Barack was president for 8 years. He passed not one law that actually benefited black people. Not one.
Transgenders got all types of
They
benefits.
don't. They got it real fast.
There's not one law. Listen. First thing is this. In order to represent a body of people, you have to create laws that create conditions for economic growth and development for a body of people. How do you do that? Well, those people have to have industry. This is the whole point of having government. So you have representatives who will represent you so you can create industries for your territories, not jobs. This is what they push on black people. We're going to push to get black people more jobs. No. You have to push for industries. But you can't do that because you don't control anything. What is an industry? It's like the electric company, utilities, right? That would be an industry where black people control all of the utilities in a particular territory. That's an industry, right? Black people control all the lumber in a particular territory. That's an industry. Black people control, let's say, all the manufacturing of cotton. That's an industry, right? That's when you have control. You control industries. Black people control no industries in all the United States. So you have no purpose to have a representative in Congress for you because you don't control anything. Nothing. Literally nothing. And so, and you don't have any rights to even, how can I say,
Ask for something.
yeah, to be able to, right, be able to act for it, exactly, be able to set up an industry so that you can control. You can. They wouldn't allow it even if you, that's like Louis Farrakhan, right? And check this out. I think this was back in the early 90s or sometime, right? He was cool with the leader of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, right? They killed him, by the way. The white man killed him. But he was cool with Muammar Gaddafi, and he made an agreement with Gaddafi where Gaddafi said, listen, I'll help you out, because everybody knows what the conditions of black people here in the United States. So Gaddafi agreed, supposedly, to give Farrakhan $1 billion for the benefit of helping black people. And you know what happened?
He died.
No.
You got
No.
right.
Look this up. I'll take my word for it. Look it up.
Or you mean?
The United States government passed a resolution and told Farrakhan, you're not allowed to take that money.
Because he black.
No, because
Because you're a subject.
You're a subject. You're a resident alien. You got no rights. You can't take foreign money. Take $1 billion. What are you gonna do it with? And bring it to the United States for the benefit of black people. You don't have no rights to do that, buddy. Literally. You have no rights to do that. We give you permission. If you're gonna get $1 billion, that means you bringing that $1 billion back to us, not to your people. Right? So, again, let's go back. I'm going to pay you, Michael Jordan, $40 million because you're making me $200 million. You with me on that? You can't go out and make $100 million. I'm not getting a cut. If you make $100 million, any black, like, what's the name? That just got paid? With the headphones.
Oh, yeah, Dre.
How much they gave him?
Like $800 million,
Yeah.
something like that.
Now think about it. In order for them to pay him $800 million, how much you think they made?
A few billion.
They had to get their cut. Farrakhan's trying to get $1 billion and was trying to cut the white man out. You can't do that. You don't get. They looked at him like, "What's wrong with you? You ain't no control over here. You can't make no moves like that." They was letting them know you got no rights. You're still resident alien. And i.e., slaves.
We don't give you permission to do that.
So that's just the reality of it. And it's sad because you have so many of our people, they don't understand it. They really don't understand what that means and what status means and what government means and position and blah blah blah. Black people who will argue this point don't realize that you're perpetuating European culture and status quo. Because everything about that individual, there's nothing African about them. In fact, they'll denounce their African heritage and say, "I'm not African, I'm American."
So quit trying to change my identity. I'm already who I was meant to be. I'm a black American born and raised. And Brother James Brown wrote a wonderful phrase. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Because I'm proud to be black. And I ain't never lived in Africa. And because my great-great-granddaddy on my daddy's side did, don't mean I want to go back. Now, I have nothing against Africa. It's where some of the most beautiful places and people in the world are found. But I've been blessed to go a lot of places in this world. And if you ask me where I choose to live, I pick America, hands down. Now, by and by, we were called Negroes.
Okay? And it's like, but you will never have rights. And they don't understand that. Because they think that they have equal status with the Caucasian. And you don't. And you can't. It's impossible. You have to have your own. In order to have rights, you have to have your own, where you have the right to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it, and the way it needs to be done. That's what rights are. If you can't make those type of decisions, then you're always in a subjective status. And that's our status here, as subjects. Period. Now, if you go to Great Britain, they let you know. They don't play that game like the United States play that game with you. Great Britain let you know. They let all black people know their status. It's not a mystery there. You're a subject. Period. And you don't have no rights here. You ain't coming up in Parliament thinking that you're gonna make a decision in the British Parliament, their government destruction. Ain't no black people allowed up there. They're very clear about that. And so we're the ones that are not clear because we think that we can integrate with them. and get the same status. And they're pushing integration. That's a whole nother level of discussion. But again, we're not citizens. We can. First thing is this: you have to create a nation. You can't even get to the state, the status of having a state without a nation first. And you can't have a nation unless you have the same cultural ideals. And right now, this is a black community, right? Most of the people who live in this subdivision are black. You go from house to house to house, and you ask black people simple questions like, what's your rules on how old you think your daughter should get married, right? If you ask that question in all these black houses, I guarantee you'll get like 20 different answers. So what does that say? That says that black people individually don't think the same. We just don't think the same. You can't create a nation with people like that. It's impossible. When there's that much disagreement, it's impossible to create a nation. So that's the first thing that has to be corrected. We have to agree on the same thing. That means if we say we're going to wear black every Friday, then everybody has to be in agreement we wear black every Friday. When you get like 9 that sit down wearing yellow, okay, now you can't count on those 9. Because remember, when you create a nation, and then you create a government, then you got to create an armed services, right? An army to protect that nation. Now, anyone in the army, they'll tell you, if you're on the battlefield, okay, you got 2 soldiers on the battlefield, I got my AK and I'm pointing east. That means he has his AK and he's pointing west. I shouldn't have to turn my head thinking that he got my back. I have to know he has my back. If I can't trust him, I can't go to war with him. You with me? Because I'm pointing east and he's gone. And now I get flanked from behind. And I'm dead. You can't build no nation like that. So in order to have a nation, everyone has to be in agreement on how we do things. Literally. Or you'll never get off the ground. And this is why black people can't have unity. And you'll never get in agreement when another body of people educate your children. It's impossible. It's impossible. That's why you'll never see black unity. The black unity will only develop when black people stop letting another body of people educate their children. It's impossible. It's just impossible. It's unheard of. That's like China sending all their children to be educated in the United States, then go back to China and think they're going to have a China again. It would turn into the United States if you allowed your children to be educated by someone else. It just can't happen. And no nation of people would ever do that. No nation other than black people. We're the only people on earth that allows another body of people to educate our children. No one would do this. And then we're complaining when they shoot Trayvon Martin. Listen. When somebody shoots your people, right, unprovoked, and just gun you down, and you are not able to go to war, that tells you what your status is. Because no other nation would tolerate that. No one would tolerate that.
Old Testament God. You would handle that.
That's that right there.
Old Testament God would handle that.
He would have wiped it out. He would have told us to get us another
we can kill indiscriminately. Literally. And there's nothing done about it. And everyone knows there's nothing going to be done about it. And there's nothing you can do about it. Because you can't do anything because you don't have a nation of people. Because you got 10 black people saying it's wrong. You got another 20 black people saying, nah, he was justified. Trayvon shouldn't have been in that area anyway. That's why he got his butt killed. Or he probably said something, blah, 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 blah. You'll get that.
Yeah, I've heard stupid stuff like that.
Exactly. And so we don't have a consensus. We don't agree. We don't agree. And so you can't create no nation like that. This is why every black organization, everyone, from Noble League, which I don't know if you ever heard of him, you got Marcus Garvey, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, even through Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, any black individual who created like a group and an organization to try to, do something for black people, they always got infiltrated and taken down, guess by who?
By us.
Oh,
by
ourselves.
us.
Yeah,
By
yeah.
own
By
people.
jealousy. Yeah.
Their own people.
We would know. We would see them coming.
Every organization is getting taken down by their own people. Why?
Because if a white man come in here right now, we all gonna look.
Right,
If
exactly.
a black dude come in here, we just gonna let it go.
It's simple. Why? Because we don't agree. We just don't agree. You know how many people sitting there up in the Nation of Islam meeting saying, that nigga ain't talking about nothing. We need to take him out. And it's, you can't create nothing like that. Nothing. Because we have no loyalty to one another. And you can't create loyalty unless you can educate your children as a body. It's just impossible. And everyone who who understands government, law, nation building knows this. This is why all black leadership that you predominantly see are all pushing integration. Why? Because those individuals were put in that status 9 times out of 10 by a Caucasian benefactor. Just do the math. Just do this. If you look up any successful black person that's making a lot of money, right? I'll say 98% of them. You will always find a Caucasian benefactor that helps sponsor and push them into that status. Just about everyone who has money. Literally.
Oh, man. I'm sorry. I know this might be going off tracks, but
Yeah.
I was watching Black Lightning the other day.
Alright?
And I like it, but I've been seeing a little questionable stuff, but even at that, there's a white dude who he's like, that's his
Caucasian
co-pilot.
benefactor. This is
Like, what the hell, man? And I thought, because even with Black Panther, I know, but still the dude who made Black Panther is white, so it's like,
This is my point. This is
jeez.
You can't build nothing like that. You can't. It's impossible. It's just impossible. Yeah. Everyone, it's a sad and cruel joke playing on black people. This is what Umar was talking about. No, it wasn't Umar. It was the other guy, Tommy Sotomayor.
Sotomayor? What was his?
I don't know if you ever heard of him.
He off the chain, but unfortunately, sometimes he's
Yeah. He said something. I got handed to him with this one. He said that black women spend in the United States, I think $7 billion on hair, on buying fake hair. $7 billion. How in the heck do we come up with that much money to buy on hair? Imagine we took that same $7 billion and put that into educating our children.
food.
$7 billion.
Because that's definitely outside of the need category.
Exactly. $7 billion. He said Jamaica, a poor country of black people, black women in Jamaica, he said, spend $1 billion with a B on hair.
What about, and I'm sure bleaching is going to come right after that pretty soon.
So you can't, when we are a nation of people, when you have a nation of people that go out their way to alter how they look by nature, you can never build a nation with someone like that. It's impossible. Because if you don't like who you are by nature, and you don't think that you are naturally beautiful, that you don't need to alter it, right? You can't, that has to be fixed. And that can only be fixed through the children. I mean, this is why we're working on our project with the whole Nuwaupu Community Circle, Nuwaupu.org, our encyclopedia projects, and why we encourage people to become members of the Nuwaupu Community Circle, because unless we begin to educate the children about what black culture is and what it means to be black and to be proud of that, as James Brown used to say, you'll never change your status, and we will continue to be gunned down consistently.